from the number of people joining in chat and the locations of the audience, I think it's just fantastic that we can be connected globally to talk about, improving our digital skills and more importantly, tapping into what I think is most important for all of us when it comes to using technology, and that's the ability to enhance human creativity. Because I do a lot of consulting to Microsoft, and the marketers and the salespeople, they want to talk about AI, and they want to talk about automation, and they want to talk about security, and all these very important things. But there's something very unique to humans, and it's creativity. It's a unique skill, and unfortunately, the way most of us embrace technology limits our creative ability. We'll talk about that throughout this session. I'm going to start on a screen here and give you a bit of my backstory as well as part of this, so you can come with me on my journey into using OneNote as my second brain. Just going to, from my second device, share the screen here. Cool. I think we've got some progress here. Excellent. So as introduced, I'm a productivity specialist and a sales coach. I work for a company called Tablet PC that my brother and myself founded back in 2009. Although my brother started in 2005 with his journey and a website that we built called Tablet PC. This was the early pen-based computing. I'm going to call it a revolution, although it was more a blip in the scheme of technology. But we're seeing some recent traction in that. I'm also a Microsoft MVP in the Office Apps and Services branch, and I specifically focus on OneNote. And what that means is I'm very fortunate and able to talk to the product team at OneNote fairly regularly. And we've spent a lot of time with them in the US and other parts of the world, just talking about the way people take notes and what's important to them. So let me just take you on this journey of what I found from a personal note-taking perspective and knowledge management perspective. And I've got some questions for you to consider before we get into our content as well here. So pretty straightforward questions, right? Would you like to improve your memory? Yeah. When was the last time you forgot something that you wish you could remember? What about your feelings of well-being? One of the common traits I hear from people, I speak to people every day about how they use technology, and every person I speak to says that their work technology life leaves them feeling frazzled by the end of the day. Does that term frazzled, does that translate for my audience? Do you understand what I mean by frazzled? It means burnt out, worn out, exhausted. To give you an example of what that feeling's like, one of my customers said to me, I find it quite funny, he said, but isn't that frazzled feeling, isn't that what makes the gin taste so good at the end of the day? Yeah, and whilst I'm sure that's probably true, I'm not sure that's a solution to our overall feelings of well-being, right? What about, how do we capture our ideas more effectively? Would you like to capture your ideas more effectively? What about achieving? What could you do, or would you do something if you are guaranteed to achieve your goals 42% more often? Would you take that step? Yeah. And overall, do you want to be more productive? Yeah. Yeah, more Gen equals all problems solved. Perry, yeah, well, that's definitely a solution that many of us have tried. I'm not sure many of us have succeeded, all right? I do prefer Scotch as well, thanks, Melody. But all right. My background, as was mentioned, is in construction. I'm actually a builder. I have 6 different building trades. Carpentry is my primary trade. And I also have drafting qualifications. So I learned to draft in the old days when we had big easels and we had what we called transparencies, and we used razor blades and ink-based pens to draw on transparencies. And if you made a mistake, you had to use the razor blade and scratch it out. So that shows you how old I am. But that's where I started my drawing and note-taking life. In the building game in particular, right, this was one of my favorite tools, the carpenter's pencil. And the carpenter's pencil, as illustrated here, is very, very useful for marking things out. But for me, it also solved tons of problems, because if I had something that didn't fit or didn't work, we just put a sketch together of how it would look, yeah, and we would build it out in an image. And there are the backs of walls. We call them gyprock walls in Australia, or plasterboard walls, where I've got sketches all over them. If in the last 30 years, if you went through Melbourne suburbs of buildings that I've renovated or worked on, and you pulled the walls apart, on the backs of the plasterboard, you'd see our sketches of how we solve problems. So from a very early working life, and I was taught this by my teacher as a carpenter, the pencil solved problems for us, because I didn't understand this at the time, But visual thinking is what the pencil enabled us to tap into. Yeah. Have you ever heard people talk about learning styles? They say that you're either an auditory or a visual learner. That thinking has been debunked, by the way. It's not true. Everybody is a visual learner. Even those that can't see are visual learners. And when we map the way the human brain works, even those who have never seen, process information creatively with the visual processing parts of the human brain. Yeah. So we all learn at different rates, but we are all visual learners. And so when it came to managing my work life, I knew that I had to write instinctively. I knew that I had to write in my diary all of the information that mattered to me. And that diary, well before the concept of Tiago's second brain, was my second brain. If it wasn't in my diary, it didn't get done. It certainly didn't get remembered. Yeah. Is there a chat there? Am I muted, Juliana? Are we good?
I can still hear you. I think we're still good.
It's not me. Good. Excellent. Thanks. And I also knew that when I wrote something down, I tended to remember it better. Is that your experience? Would you say that if you write it, now I'm talking about writing as opposed to typing. I'm going to make a distinction between writing and typing here as mediums. But would you say that you remember more of what you write or what you type? Yeah. Well, the science tells us that you actually remember more of what you write. So I knew this instinctively, but this caused me a lot of problems because my diary was my life. And as a builder and a building manager or construction manager, I had to be on site with my people. Yeah. If you've ever tried to manage tradespeople, by the way, what happens if you're not with them? They're not doing what you want, right? So you've got to be with them as much as you possibly can. But in those early days, and I'm talking about the late 90s, mid to late 90s here, I had to be on site with my tradies who worked from 7 a.m. until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And after they'd finished or before they started, I had to be in my office processing my notes from the day. So I would often go to the office at 5 o'clock in the morning, work for an hour, get to site with my paperwork, take notes for the day, go back to an office, and sometimes I'd be there till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, post-processing the notes that I'd taken through the day. And I tried to solve that problem with the use of technology, yeah? And I tried, do you know what I'm talking about if I say a Palm Pilot? Who's ever tried a Palm Pilot, right? And that was a little handheld device with a stylus, and I tried to use a digital tool, right, to take my notes instead. And I had a laptop as well, but I knew straight away with my laptop that it really was a portable device, not a mobile device. In other words, I couldn't really walk and work with the laptop. It would sit in my car or would sit in the lunchroom, yeah, but it would not go with me wherever I happened to be. Whereas the Palm Pilot sort of tried to do that, but the software wasn't where it needed to be. Syncing was an issue. I couldn't really get images that I'd drawn to come through like I would like to. And then my brother Brett, who's the star of our YouTube channel, he got me into this device in 2003. And a rep came out and saw him. He thought it looked pretty cool, right? And then he said to me, Matt, you've got to try this. Yeah, you've got to try this. This is a tablet PC, and I think this will solve your problems. He was working in IT. I was working in construction. We talk about how we could fix our duplication of effort problems through the use of technology. And this device, together with Microsoft OneNote that came out in 2003, changed my life. Because as you can see here, this device, this HP TC1100, right, was a removable keyboard device, pen only, no touch input, but I could use the keyboard when I was in my car or at the desk, detach the screen from the keyboard when I wanted to, and walk around with it like a clipboard. So this became my digital clipboard, my digital paper replacement tool, and I started to write and draw into Microsoft OneNote. Here's what it looked like docked in my office, so I could use it with a second monitor and a keyboard and mouse and turn it into a workstation, but I was able to consolidate devices. So I no longer had a Palm Pilot and a laptop. I had what we call a multimodal device that worked as a desktop and a laptop and was a mobile digital piece of paper for me. And I took more than 20 hours a week out of my workflow by going down this path. And the key thing that this enabled me to do was I was able to work on anything from anywhere. So if I wanted to write an email, I could actually physically write an email to someone while standing in front of a customer or in front of the job. I didn't have to take a note and post-process it. Yeah, I could do anything from anywhere in any mode. And it was revolutionary. So from a work perspective, it changed our working life. I got my staff tablet PCs. And by the way, in 2003, these devices with the docking station, etc., we were spending over $5,000 per device in 1993. So if there's any economists on the line, you can work out what sort of dollar value that was. But it took out of mine and my team's time, all of my supervisors, we saved more than 20 hours a week each by going through this methodology. Yeah. Let's talk about what was actually going on from a scientific perspective here. Yeah. So as a builder, right, and as a tradesperson, the thing that I was applying to my job most often to solve issues, and there's always issues on the job, no matter what type of job you're in, was human creativity. Human creativity is the ability to take the knowledge that you have and have acquired over time and apply it in new and productive or creative ways. Yeah. So personal knowledge management becomes really critical here, because if I don't manage my knowledge or collect my knowledge, how can I refer back to it in order to use it to apply to new situations or to solve problems? But what we have to understand is that creativity is not an act. It's actually a process in the human mind. Yeah, it's a manner of generating visual thoughts, not words in text. Yeah, images are critical to creativity. We've got to be able to visualize, and it doesn't stop there, right? We need to generate good ideas and process them now in a productive way. Simon Sinek talks about this, right? And his quote is that you need chaos. And once you have chaos, that generates ideas, but then you need a process to apply to those ideas to turn them into something productive. Yeah. There is a natural tool of the human creative mind, and it is a pen. Yeah, and it's not a keyboard. And in this modern era, our creativity requires more than a keyboard and a mouse. Now, I use a keyboard and a mouse every day of my computing life. Yeah. But I'm also able to embrace a pen digitally rather than physically, because it saves me time and lets me step quicker into new processes. And so here's another key quote, right? When it comes to engaging the human creative capabilities, we have to stop passively consuming information, and we have to begin to engage with our ideas. Here's an example of engagement with your ideas. Have you ever printed a piece of paper, right? Maybe it was a Word document or some report, and taken a pen and read it while you mark it up? That's an example of active engagement with content. Passive engagement is scrolling through it on a screen. Yeah. So active engagement is what we need to apply to our knowledge. I'll share some links with you at the end of this session, right, with regards to the research. We've got tons of research. You can be looking at this for yourselves on, right? One of the researchers that we spent a bit of time with listening to, he talks about the learning process and that recall is critical to learning, right? So it's all well and good to take the information in, but the mind has to recall it to cement it in place. Interestingly, when you write your ideas on paper, the recall has been done. Because when you take an idea in, you can't write as fast as you can hear. Yeah. So you have to process the information and formulate it into a sentence that you structure in writing. That's the collection, the processing, and the recall all done at once, and you've just taken a note. If you type those notes, nothing is processed. You become a stenographer. What does a stenographer do? They listen and type without thinking. Yeah. And that's how you need to be to type fast. Yeah. This is how Leonardo da Vinci wrote it. Yeah, he said, the more minutely you describe, the more you'll confuse the mind of the reader and the more you'll remove him from the knowledge of the thing being described. It's necessary to make a drawing as well to describe. Yeah. So text is not enough. Yeah. And Professors Van der Meer and Van der Wiel, I've got some links to their studies as well. There's a couple of them. They've been sponsored by Microsoft, these studies, but they're very interesting studies. You can see here the hairnet that this student is wearing. This is a university-age student, yeah. And they mapped the way the mind activates when we type versus when we write. And what they found was that the brain works very differently when you write than when you type. In fact, it's far more active when you are writing. And think about this. If I'm writing something, what human things are involved? Well, I have hand-eye coordination, fine motor skills are involved, visual processing, language-based processing. All of these different areas of the human brain are being activated in ways that no other tool we use as a human does. My brain is flooded with activity when I write or when I draw. That simply doesn't happen when I type. Yeah. So, and the science is increasingly compelling. And there's an alarming trend here as well, I'll mention to you. We have a generation of children hitting school age who have speech problems and no fine motor skills. What's the underlying cause of this? Well, there are numbers of causes to this. It's not one key thing, but there is a key point. The advent and the overuse of touch screen devices is slowing down or changing the way our children's brains are developing. Now, I grew up with screen time, right? My kids grew up with screen time. My kids are a bit older. They missed out on touch screen time. Yeah. If you talk to any young or early education expert, so someone that's talking about early education, 0 to 5, and particularly 0 to 10 years old, they'll tell you there is a pandemic of children that can't speak properly and have no fine motor skills. Because when I use touch on a device, I'm not deploying fine motor skills, right? So touch is different to using a pen as well. And 30 minutes a day of touch screen use for our under 5-year-olds is stopping their brains from developing properly. That's a bit of a sidetrack. I won't go down that path at the moment, but yeah, there's tons of work being done in this space to think about this. If you want your children to learn, teach them to draw, teach them to write. And I'm going to tell you that writing on pen and paper is far better than using a keyboard and a mouse. But ultimately, what we're here to talk about, right, is the ability to use a digital pen. And there are plenty of devices that you can use digital pens, and across all platforms, whether it be Android, iOS, or in Windows, you can use a digital pen. Yeah. OneNote, in my opinion, is the single most important digital pen-based tool you can possibly find to use, and I'm yet to find a tool that matches it for its capability. I'm not going to spend too much time in demos for you today because I want to get to the conversation with you, but I am going to show you a couple of critical things that you need to know about. And these things have been inside OneNote for 19 years now. Yeah. So 19 years ago, we could do this. I'm going to give you an example of it right now. I'm going to search inside. I've got about 16 years worth of notes. I've got about 16 years worth of notes open here currently in OneNote. All right. So how would you go from finding notes in your paper-based diaries from, say, last year? Would that be easy or hard for you? What about from 6 weeks ago? What about from yesterday? Did you know that the average information worker spends between 40 and 80 hours per calendar year looking for misplaced objects in an office, including their notes? 1 to 2 weeks per year looking for stuff. I know I wrote that in here somewhere. Where is it? Yeah. In OneNote, I'm using the desktop version of OneNote on a Windows device right now. I have a search function up here in the top left, right-hand corner. I'm going to search inside all of my notes for a word. I'm going to use the word anything. You can see that my handwriting is pretty bad here. Let me just join that back together. Yeah, but it's still able, Windows is able to read my handwriting, no matter how terrible it is. But I'm just going to search for the word anything in OneNote. And what you'll see here populating is a list of results. So these are the results from my 16 years worth of notes, right, wherever I've written the word anything. And I wanted to show you this first result that's on the screen right here now. Can you see on my screen here, it's highlighted yellow for us? Yeah. My handwriting, my terrible handwriting is searchable. How much time would you save if your handwritten notes were searchable? An awful lot. Now, here's another personal story for you, right? So I had a stand-up argument with my grade 4 teacher about my handwriting skills. Yeah. She pulled me up in front of the class. I was compared to, I'm pretty sure her name was Rebecca. This is etched in my mind, this moment in time. Rebecca was a beautiful handwriter, an absolutely beautiful handwriter and classmate. She was the good example, and my page looked like a black painting by comparison to her neat handwriting. Yeah, so I was the bad example. She was the good example. And my response to my teacher when she told me in front of the class that I needed to improve my handwriting skills, my response was, Miss Hoy, I'm going to get a job where I'll never have to write. That was my response. Yeah. Now here I am, probably nearly 40 years later, teaching people to write digitally. So I'm sure she's very happy with the result of that scenario. What she won't be happy with is the quality of my handwriting. Yeah. But in OneNote, right, I can write anywhere on the page. A canvas in OneNote is limitless in size. It's completely without restriction. Got limitless canvas here, and I can write. And my writing is searchable. But my writing is not only searchable, it's also convertible. Under the Draw tab in OneNote, I have this ink to text function, and I can just simply convert it to text so that other people can benefit from my writing when I want to. So not only can OneNote read my handwriting, OneNote becomes a stepping stone tool for me. I can use my notes and convert them into text, right, so that I can use them elsewhere. I could copy that text into a Word document or some other place. In fact, as a practice, when it comes to creative thinking, if we start something from scratch at work at Tablet PC, we write out our ideas and we craft those ideas into text once they've been written. There's something else I want to show you here which illustrates the difference between writing and typing. And this is a slide that's a summary of some research done by a Professor Gordon Sampson. He's a retired biologist. Yep, and he was talking about the way the human mind thinks. He came up with some interesting concepts. And this one here is about two different versions of thinking that we have. Unstructured thinking and structured thinking. We can call them version 1 and version 2 thinking, or high formality and low formality thinking. Now, when it comes to getting things done or productivity, we all love structured communication. We love this. I mean, who of you has used Word documents before or something equivalent to a Word document? Of course you have. What about PowerPoint or some sort of formal presentation tool? Do you use those tools? Have you ever typed an email? Of course you have. Yep. Who loves typing for themselves a list of things to get done? I don't mean a written to-do list. I mean a neat typed to-do list. Does anyone here love those? They want a neat typed to-do list that they can cross things off or tick them off once they're done. Yeah. Why we love structured communication so much is because it's the end. We're at the end. If we've published it, it's done. Yeah. Professor Gordon Sampson, he was sending out ideas to colleagues in structured formats. And what he noticed, he got back. So he sent them for review. Can you please review my paper? Can you please give me comment on my paper? What he discovered, right? What he discovered was that he didn't get back ideas. When he shared with them formal communication, he got back format, grammar, and spelling checks. No content. When he shared with them handwritten ideas, or what we call version 1 thinking, no one cared about the spelling and the grammar and the format, but they interchanged or exchanged ideas. They got involved in the idea. So Professor Gordon Sampson's work illustrated that there is if you want quality structured outcomes, you must go through a version 1 thinking process. What are those version 1 thinking processes? Well, key point, pen-based note-taking. Keyboard-based note-taking is not a version 1 thinking process, and you cannot turn it into one. Brainstorming, mind mapping, if you do those things with a tool, they are no longer version 1 thinking processes. They must be free-form and analog or pen-based, if you like, to be truly unstructured thinking. Non-visual, spatial, non-linear, visual, not non-visual, visual, non-linear, spatial processes. Whiteboarding is another great example of this. Whiteboarding with a group of people, an excellent version of version 1 thinking. What about writing on the back of a napkin, a coaster, or your hand to remember something? Have you ever done that? Has anyone got ink on their hand? It's a Friday morning here. Most people, if you do this regularly, have ink on your hand by Friday. So if you do that, just well done to you for trying to remember stuff. So, and just finally, to make this point to you more clear, I'm going to open up a blank Word document, right? And just this is how version 2 thinking takes over the creative process. We've all started something from scratch in a document like this, right? Blank page, but I'm going to start typing into this page. What do you typically type into this page? A heading or a title? So here's my heading in my page. I put my first content into this page just as a fantastic start. And this is where version 2 thinking hijacks the creative process. I go, what a boring heading. And so I'm going to play with this heading. We'll play with the font. We'll play with the color. We'll play with the size. Yep. And 30 minutes later, what have you actually built? Yeah, the answer is not much. Maybe it's the best heading ever, but you've sacrificed content for format. Yeah. So hopefully, now I've made my point to you that the pen works differently with the human brain than any other tool. And if you want to take advantage of that in the modern digital world, and if you want to become more productive and save time, accomplish 42% more of your goals, you need to take a pen and write them down. There's a study that showed that if you wrote down your goals, you are 42% more likely to achieve them than if you didn't. Yep. The science tells us that you remember, understand, and conceptualize between 10 and 60% better with a pen than you possibly can with a keyboard. Yeah. And this is a barrier for those of us that come from a consumeristic thinking background, right? We're trying consumer-based apps to take our note-taking, to capture our data. These consumeristic thoughts come from apps, right, that are text-based, that are not multimodal, that don't embrace all of the different types of media that are available to us to capture ideas on. So let's do a 15-minute review before I go to questions. Yeah, let's do a 15-minute review. I really enjoyed Tiago's video with, I write his name down and I've forgotten it, the guy from Notion, that's the Notion advocate, right? So really cool discussion on using Notion as a way to manage your second brain, or to build your second brain. And that was the first time that Tiago introduced me, at least anyway, to his 11 criteria for note-taking apps. So I'm just going to go a different page here in OneNote, and let's just evaluate these 11 criteria, right, against Microsoft OneNote. Let's do a quick run through. We won't go too much into how-tos, but I'm just going to run this through with you so that you can make your own evaluation of whether OneNote is somewhere that you should start building your second brain. Well, I've already shown you that OneNote can search all kinds of content, handwriting or text. What I haven't shown you is a way that you can actually take your analog paper-based processes and turn them into a digital one. Who's got a drawer or a shelf full of their old diaries and notes? Does anyone have that? You want to keep referring back to them, so you've kept those notebooks? I'm going to go back to this search for the same word, anything. And I'm going to show you this particular result that's come up in my feed here. Can you see what's been found on this page here? Let me just zoom in here for you so you get the context of what I'm showing you here. This is a photo. This is a photo of a printed piece of paper that had handwriting on it. Yeah. So you can see the fold lines in the paper. That handwriting is on the paper. But because it's on a photograph, and because that photograph is now in OneNote, it has become searchable. So what could you do with your old diaries? Take photos of those pages that matter to you into OneNote, and those images will become searchable. If you have OneNote on your iPhone or your Android phone, the camera is built into it. So you can open OneNote on your phone, launch the camera from a OneNote page, and take a photo of your paper-based notes into OneNote. They're now searchable. Yeah. Not only are these notes searchable, they're extractable. Just watch this for me. I'm going to right mouse click on this image and I'm going to copy the text from it. I'm going to go back to our blank Word document over here. That's the wrong page. Here's what I want to go. Let's just undo the heading things here. I'm going to right click and I'm just going to actually split screen this so you get the impact of what I'm doing here. Here is the image that I've just copied the text from. Here's my Word document. I'm going to paste that content straight to Word out of this image. Would that save anyone some time? Being able to photograph an image and extract text from it. If you look closely here, right, you'll see that it's even had a go at the handwriting. Now, it didn't get the handwriting or the formatting completely accurate, but would you rather retype that or just proofread and edit it? Which would you rather? It's a no-brainer, right? OneNote's been doing that since 2010, by the way. So that's the search capability. So can I build my second brain in OneNote and get search happening? Yeah, absolutely I can. What about duplication, the ability to copy information? Well, yeah, I can copy anything in OneNote. And there's a structured note-taking hierarchy in OneNote. I have pages on the right-hand side that live inside sections that live inside notebooks. Right, so I've got organized note-taking, and I can duplicate individual pieces of content or entire notebooks throughout OneNote. Copy and paste, works everywhere. I can also grab information from other places. For example, I just opened a web page before, and you'll see at the top of my web page, I actually have a OneNote add-in to my browser. This works on Chrome or Microsoft Edge, and I can simply capture this article into OneNote, right? Just by clicking a button. I've found some research on the web. I want to capture it, and yeah, what do I want? The full page, a region, the article, a bookmark. I want to clip this information from the web into OneNote to build my second brain. So that's another really cool way that we can duplicate information and capture it into our second brain. I can access information anywhere in OneNote. And one of the things that most of the apps I review and look at miss is the ability to work offline. OneNote always has worked offline, and it's an incredibly powerful tool. I can have my notebooks on my local device. I don't have to be online to access my second brain. Yeah. Sharing information. I can simply email this page to a bunch of people, or I can actually share my notebooks with others. In fact, you'll see, if you look through my notebook list on the left-hand side here, that some of the notebooks are bold in heading. Those bold headings are telling me that there's new content in those notebooks from my colleagues that I haven't yet read because they're shared notebooks. In fact, every one of my notebooks is shared with different groups of people. Yeah, so we have sharing. We can edit content, and I've shown you how we can even edit images in OneNote. So editing my content in OneNote is really easy. I can upgrade my content in OneNote because as I said before, OneNote's a stepping stone tool. So I build my content in OneNote in a low formality way. I get it ready to publish, and then I move that into PowerPoint or into Word or into some other published tool, right, as more finished content. And at that stage, we shift our ideation from a formulated idea into a formatting and publishing discussion. So OneNote is a part of the cycle of work in our world and the way we teach people to work. It's where we form our ideas, it's where we build our content. And once we've built quality content, then we move to formatting and structural tools. Building content in structural tools from scratch is dangerous. You are limiting your creative abilities. Yeah. We can transfer information to other platforms. Hyperlinking is really cool in OneNote. It's a very underutilized feature, but I can actually just put an image on a page here or a squiggle. I can right-click against that image, and I can copy a link to that paragraph on my page, and I can paste that somewhere else. That could be externally to OneNote, like an email or a web page. Here is the link I've just pasted to another page of OneNote. I'm going to click this link, and you can see it takes me straight back to that note. So I can hyperlink to content, to pages, to sections, or to notebooks. I can also copy hyperlinks from anywhere into OneNote. So maybe I want to reference some documents or some other content. I can put links to those in my OneNote pages, and they'll be active links. One of the other features I love about OneNote is the ability to work with media straight away. So here's an example of that. I'm going to go to our YouTube channel at Tablet PC. There's a link on the page, I think, to the registration session here for our YouTube channel. We have a free OneNote course here, by the way, if you're interested in finding this out. If you want to know about the science behind the pen, this series here, the science behind the Surface Pen, it explains all of the scientific research that we've gathered and talk about with regards to the importance of drawing versus typing and writing versus typing. But let's just pick one of these videos. Let's go to one of my recent videos here. How to bring your notebooks into Teams. We won't play that, but I am going to copy. If I can make this work, let's just move down here. I'm going to copy this out and paste this URL into my OneNote page here. And what you'll see here in a few seconds is I would actually, there you go, it's already happened. I'm actually able to watch that video through a OneNote page. So I can bring external media into my OneNote pages. I can also, under the Insert tab, choose to record audio or video directly into a OneNote page if I want to. Yeah. One of the things I love about recording content is taking notes in meetings. I'm going to give you an example of that. I sit on some boards, mostly sporting organizations, but here's a special general meeting I went to, right? We don't need to know about the content here, but I printed the agenda to OneNote because you can treat OneNote like a printer. And then I've written notes at that meeting. But I've also actually got an audio file on this page, and this audio file is the recording of the meeting. Yep. Now I'm going to hit play on this recording. I don't think you'll hear this through the call, which is good. I don't want you to hear it. But what I want to show you is playback. Now, how can I show you playback? Watch this. I'm going to jump 10 minutes forward.
From a constitutional perspective over there.
Hang on, there is the audio. Let's turn it down. I'm going to jump another 10 minutes forward in my recording here. Do you notice what's happening to the notes as I skip through this recording? Can you see that the notes are being highlighted in time with the recording? So OneNote tracks time, date, author, all sorts of things, yeah? And it applies them in really cool ways. Like I can just go, I wrote point of order here. That's what that says. I know it's terrible writing, but that's what it says, point of order. If I click point of order, a play symbol appears straight away. And when I hit that play symbol, the timestamp in the recording will jump to that point in my note taking. What would that mean, right, for your note taking experience in a lecture, for example? If you could go back to what you were listening to while you're writing your notes. Really incredible, incredible learning tool. Back to our automation, or metadata, right? I've already mentioned that briefly, but basically OneNote tracks author, it tracks who wrote what, it keeps versions of pages for us. In fact, if I go to the history tab here, I can probably see page versions for this particular page. Oops. Why is that coming up? Cool. Yeah, in fact, here it is. You can see here there's two previous versions kept of this page right here underneath this particular page here. So every time I make a change to my OneNote page, a version's kept and I come back to these versions later. So it's really a great history here inside OneNote. And Tiago's 11th point was the bonus point, right, on evaluating second brain building tools, and it was about automation. OneNote integrates incredibly well with Outlook. You can build your own scripts for it. We've built our own .com add-ins, which include launching a camera from OneNote directly in the desktop application. It's quite customizable. We have page templates we can build here. There's tons of things we can do to customize our OneNote notebooks. Very good question here to Jeff, which leads us to the question and answer part of what we're going to talk about. Matthew, where is the data being saved on, in OneNote? And the answer is wherever you want it to be saved, Jeff. So I'll just quickly show you this. I'm going to go to File and New. I'm going to create a new OneNote notebook. And what OneNote cares about first when you create a notebook is where you're going to put it. Because you could put it on this device that I'm working on. You could put it on a USB key. You could put it in cloud storage, in a OneDrive location or a SharePoint or a Teams site. If your work is using Microsoft Teams, by the way, you probably don't know this, but every Microsoft team that's been created has a OneNote notebook already created for it. Yeah. So you can create that, you can store that notebook wherever you like. And it doesn't matter where you store the notebook, it will be visible through OneNote. All of my notebooks live in different locations, but they're available to me inside of OneNote. So in short, right, OneNote is the bridge between the digital and the analog world. More importantly, it is the way that I can take the best in human creativity, that's a pen, and bring that thinking into a digital world, into a world that I can populate ideas, refer back to those ideas, recall my ideas, and formulate them into outcomes that bring benefit to myself and to those who work with me. Yeah. And Jeff, around security, yeah, your data is private. It's not none of your data, even your OneNote, even your OneDrive and SharePoint data, right, is not visible to Microsoft. Yeah, it's stored by them. It's not visible to them. So yes, you don't have to store. If you don't want to trust the cloud, you don't have to store your notebooks in the cloud. You can put them on your device. By the way, OneNote automatically keeps backups of its files in the desktop version of OneNote. So it's automatically backed up your notebooks. Obviously, if you're keeping notebooks on local devices, you need to think about backup options. It's one of the cool things about cloud storage is I can get a brand new device and get into my notebooks in minutes. Well, look, that's a whirlwind tour through my history of note taking and how I embraced OneNote as my building a second brain or personal knowledge management system. Hope you learned something from that. I'm going to stick around and answer questions for as long as we need to. Yeah, thanks for listening to that. Feel free to engage with us directly after this as well. My email address is available. You can get us through our YouTube channel as well, as was already mentioned here. But yeah, keen to hear from you and your comments. But Julia, any questions that stand out that I should answer to begin with?
Yeah, I just want to say, first I want to say, wow, I was completely blown away. I think you absolutely killed this presentation, and the chat has been blowing up. It has been super, super engaged. There were so many great insights in there, and I immediately wanted to start kind of like picking up a pen and writing things down again. Yeah, let me check the Q&A tab here. We have some great questions from our audience. Matthew is asking, what is Microsoft's plan for OneNote and updating the tool? And also in the wake of Loop, I think Loop is a new Microsoft application that's coming out soon. Can you tell us more about that? What the future of Microsoft OneNote might look like?
Yeah, that's a really long discussion, but I'll keep it brief there, right? So Microsoft OneNote went through this phase where they had more than one version of Microsoft OneNote, which is interesting, right? So how can you have more than one OneNote? But they did, right? So Microsoft, like every tech company, they make amazing decisions sometimes, and you go, well, where did that come from? And they went down a path of building this universal Windows platform app, and they worked out after a year or two that they made a mistake. So the future of OneNote, particularly in the Windows ecosystem, is this desktop version that I'm currently using. And I can tell you that there's a ton of work being done in the background. It's an astronomical amount of work they've done to change the back office code of OneNote. Off the top of my head, it was something like 42 million lines of code that they had to edit, right, to modernize this OneNote client, which was built for the first time in 2003. By the way, on our YouTube channel is a discussion with one of the inventors of OneNote, Stephen Sinofsky, and can't remember the other gentleman's name, but the two guys at Microsoft that started it, an interview with one of them's there. Really interesting insights into where the tool came from. So the code, my understanding is the coding has been done, and now they're looking at making this look a lot more like the rest of Office and integrating it more closely with Office. But the desktop version of OneNote is the way forward for our Windows users. On Android and iOS, it's being upgraded all the time. It's getting tons of investment from Microsoft. And in my opinion, as someone that plays in the Microsoft stack of tools all day, every day, it is my favorite tool, bar none, because of the time it saves me and the ability to embrace multimodal computing, which means keyboard, mouse, voice, touch, pen, speech, all of those things, right? It's together in the computing world. Modern computing has to move beyond keyboard and mouse to be humanly productive and creative. So yeah, so the desktop version, OneNote for Windows 10 will eventually disappear. It'll be around for a long time, but the desktop version is the way the code is going and moving forward. So that answers that question about the future of OneNote. And so very interesting in the fluid framework that Microsoft's building. There's some very interesting capabilities coming to that space. So can't talk about that too much. So watch this space, but some really cool things coming.
Exciting. Yeah. Can you talk about more about the differences in OneNote for Mac, so the Apple ecosystem, and then for the PC? I know this is a question that came up a few times about asset in the chat. Can Apple users also leverage OneNote?
They can certainly use OneNote, and OneNote on iPad, where you get a pen, would be my recommendation to you. The capabilities aren't as good as they are in the desktop version of OneNote, but it's still better than using a keyboard and mouse to do our creative thinking. We do think, from a productivity perspective, that people need to find devices that are what we call consolidation devices. I shouldn't have a tablet plus a laptop plus a desktop. What we should have as fewer devices as possible. The more devices I have, the more burden I place on my cognitive load, the less productive I am, is my experience. So yeah, I know you can pick up any device these days on any platform and make it work, but a device that works multimodal is the best productive device you can have. And I understand that's not everyone's preference, and that's why humans are amazing. We've got free will and free choice. You can do what you like. But if you genuinely want to be productive, you're going to get a device that has a removable keyboard and a digital pen, in addition to keyboard and mouse capabilities. There are differences in the Android version, the iOS version, the Mac version, and the Windows version, but they're working all the time to bring those closer and closer together.
Interesting. Then here's a question from Donald, and a lot of other people have brought this topic up in the chat regarding using the digital pen on a tablet, like the Surface Pro or the pen on the iPad. That it can be a different feel of writing than you're writing, obviously, with kind of like a pen like this on a paper. So how do you kind of like get around that? Or is it something you just got used to, or is there something that you do that makes it easier?
A couple of things I do on digital writing tools. So you can see my screen here. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just stop sharing this content so you can see a bit better what I'm doing here. I'm going to use my tablet here, right, as a tablet. And what I do with this case is the pen, particularly in Windows, when the pen comes near the screen, a dot appears before you make contact. As soon as I see the dot, I can rest my hand on the display. So this is one of the barriers to writing on digital screens I see mostly, that people want to hover their hand over the screen. That's not a natural writing experience, right? You put your hand on the paper when you write. So with an active digitizer screen like the Surface Pro or others like that, you can rest your hand on the screen. So treat it like paper. Yes, it is a different feel. You can get different pen tips for Surface pens to make them feel differently. But the real issue is it's not about the feel, it's about training and practice. And this is one of the other problems we have in the tech world, that we've forgotten the basics of tech education. You know, when was the last time you were trained on your operating system or the applications you use on a daily basis? You know, our football players train every week, kicking a ball, catching a ball, whatever they do, right? Don't they know how to do those things by now? Why do they keep training the basics? In the tech world, we have this marketing-driven fallacy that exists, that everyone knows how to use tech. And in my experience, nobody knows how to use tech productively. And even myself, I learn things every day about how I could use tech better. But as long as my resume says I'm proficient in Word and Excel, we're good to go. And it's bizarre that we let that happen. So I think it's a training issue, right? That if you don't like the feel of your digital pen on glass, then it's a training and practice issue. So here's the question, right? Are you prepared to pay a minimum of 8 hours per week in time penalty because you prefer the feel of pen and paper over pen and glass? Up to you.
You're making some excellent points there. Certainly, and especially around the need for that digital training, that we're not spending enough time of actually getting properly trained in the tools we use. And I just have to throw it out there. That's what we do in building a second brain. That's what we focus on in the course, really, also. And there's also an awesome discussion going on in the chat right now around a paper-like feel or paper-like covers for tablet PCs or iPads that can make that easier. So I'm actually going to check that out myself for sure.
Again, right? I think those things are they're you know, Tiago mentioned it. They're procrastinations, right? That's not the issue. The issue is you need to get used to using your pen on glass. Yeah. So it never the feel doesn't bother me. In fact, you know, if you've got a brand new device like a Surface Pro 8 and they've got this Surface Slim Pen 2 that I have here, they've built haptic feedback into the pen to make it feel more like paper. So, you know, modern devices, they are working on this all the time, right? But I've been using digital pen since 2003, and once I got used to it, I've never thought, oh, I wish it felt like paper. I'm just happy that it's saving me time and I can do my job, you know, or I can capture that idea. I can find that information.
Yeah, amazing. We have a few more technical questions here in the chat that we can maybe go through quickly. Michael is asking, can you highlight text within a PDF inside OneNote?
Yes, of course you can.
Great. Perfect. Then Eric is asking, if you embed Word, Excel, or MS Calendar bits into OneNote, can they be made dynamic and there's a kind of like a two-way update happening between those?
With spreadsheets, you can, and Visio diagrams, you can. But with Word documents and other things, what we would be teaching you to do is to hyperlink them to the real document. And again, in Windows, I showed you split screening, right? This is another thing that people don't know how to do, but I can have OneNote open with my spreadsheet or my Word document side by side. So I don't need to embed them inside each other because I can see them at the same time, side by side. So we would recommend hyperlinking over embedding, even for the spreadsheet capabilities and Visio capabilities. That's what I would be recommending people do. Yeah.
Great. Okay, I'm just looking through some other.
Sven's asking me about palm rejection. There's actually a setting in Windows. If you search for pen in Windows, you can actually turn on a setting. It's not on by default in Windows, that ignores touch input when you're using your pen, and that will improve the palm rejection of your pen. Sven's saying that his iPad has better palm rejection than his Surface. It's a setting. Just turn it on the Surface and you'll find them to be the same, if not the other way around.
That's great to know. It seems easy to do. Avi's asking, how does OneNote compare to Evernote? Do you have experience there? What are the differences?
Yeah, look, I'm limited experience with Evernote, but my key understanding of the difference is ink versus text. That's my key understanding of the difference. The major thing for me from a note-taking tool is that I can, think in ink in OneNote, and I don't think I can do that at the same level in Evernote.
Yeah. Great. Okay, I'm just looking through the question. Jenny is asking, is there a way to train the OneNote OCR capabilities? I have great handwriting, but I cannot make OneNote recognize it if I take a picture of my paper notes. Then it doesn't turn out right.
Absolutely. Yes, there is. Here's the first thing is every time you use OneNote, it learns from you. Yeah. The second thing is, I'll just come back to sharing screen then for this, because this is a demo. Just let me find the Zoom window again here. Here we go, share screen. Let's go back to that image I found here before. If it's not finding your handwriting, right, please right click on the image and make sure that the make text and image searchable is turned on. Might be disabled, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that Windows has a tool inbuilt called the tablet input panel. You saw me writing into this a couple of times. This tool here lets me write into any application. Here's my Word document again, right? I'm going to write into text. It's going to get that right. Now that's terrible handwriting, but look at that, right? It's got that correct into Windows. This tool learns and trains your operating system every time you use it. I want to make a point here. Did you know that less than 20% of workers can type faster than they can write? If you can type faster than you can write, you can't think and type faster than you can write. You can challenge me on that if you want to, but your thinking process brings your typing speed back down to your handwriting speed. Yeah, so we have 80% of our workforce that would be better off with a pen than they would with a keyboard. So this tool here is one of the most underutilized features in Windows. It learns from me every time I use it. OneNote benefits from that learning as well. You need to be trained in how to use it. It's not a university course. It's about 20 minutes of training. You can find the YouTube video on our website. But yeah, learn to write to text in Windows. It will improve all the recognition capabilities of OneNote. It's called the tablet input panel. It's a part of the on-screen keyboards.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Then another quick technical question. Ruby is wondering, how did you get your tabs on the top of the screen and then split your screen between notebooks on one side and pages on the other?
Okay, so this is probably to do with the version of OneNote that you're using. So I'm using the desktop version of OneNote. There is another version called OneNote for Windows 10, which has the pages on the left. This is a setting under File and Options in OneNote for desktop. Yeah. The other version of OneNote has all the pages on the left. That's the education version that most education people are using. It's just a different way of looking. You can't make that one look like mine. Yeah, that's the other version of OneNote, right? Jeff's asking me to explain writing and thinking speeds, please, as well. I'll go back to that. Yeah, people handwrite between 20 and 50 words a minute on average. Touch typing starts at around about 40 words a minute, but our quality touch typists can type at between 50 and 100 plus words per minute. Any touch typist that is not looking at the keys and typing and reading is duplicating content. They are not thinking about their content. My wife's a legal secretary, right? So she can type at 100 words a minute, but she is not thinking about what she is typing. It's a duplication of effort process. If she types an email thinking about it, she's still a fast typist, but the thinking process brings her back down very close to her natural handwriting speed, which is linked to thinking. Thinking and writing are connected. Thinking and typing are not. This is one of the reasons why the brain is not as active when I type as when I write. Yeah. So even if you're a gun typist and you prefer to type, and I type at my keyboard all the time, so I'm not saying I don't type, yeah, but you think differently at the keyboard. And when you are thinking about what you're typing, your speed comes back down very close to your handwriting speed. That's exactly right, Brenda. The world record typing speed is something like 240 words a minute. You can go online and search it and look for it. I've got it on file here, right? Yeah, but that person's just, it's a typed transcript. They're just copying it. That's all they're doing. I'm sure there's other reasons why you're stuck on that thesis, Sharon.
Awesome. We've 60 minutes have really just flown by. What's kind of like one last, there's been so many amazing insights and takeaways from this session. If you could kind of like sum it up into a few sentences, what's the one main thing that you want people to take away?
Yeah, I want you to embrace the human condition. Yep, I want you to embrace what's natural to human thinking and not let tech or marketers rob you of that. Yeah. We have a whole generation of people who think that typing on their phones is productive, and it's not. And it's worse than that. It's limiting their thinking capabilities. Yeah. So yeah, handwriting, drawing, thinking. If you can't do it on a digital device, do it on pen and paper. But if you want to bridge the digital divide, get a tool that lets you creatively think in the digital world. And that's a digital pen plus OneNote. So links to the YouTube channel, they're on our registration page. They're also, Julia, do you want to post a link to those in the chat for me if you can?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just posting it again here. This is a link to the YouTube channel. Yeah, please follow Mathew, reach out. I'm also going to share those links again as part of the recording in an email to all attendees that will go out in a couple of hours, or well, actually more likely tomorrow morning. Need to get some sleep. But yeah, thank you, Mathew, for a truly amazing presentation. And thank you for taking the time to answer all these questions and for giving us this insight into Microsoft OneNote. I'm really blown away what this tool can do. I had no idea. And yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks again. Thanks to everyone joining. Thanks for the questions. Hope to hear from you again.